well, the stop motion in the last video was terrible, so I'm not going to do it ever again. Probably. Possibly. Don't count on it. It's all toy reviews from here on, with Generation Springer. He was one of the most hyped toys of 2013, and marked Hasbro's first good attempt at a modern triple changer. Jumping straight out of the pages of The Last Stand of the Wreckers, he had a lot to prove. Astrotrain was a mess, and Blitzwing is considered one of the worst Generations toys of all time due to its quality control issues. Tankor, although not as hated as the others, didn't fare much better. Other than that, all we had was some tacked-on battle modes in the deluxe scale, like Dark Mount. Seriously, how's the name Straxus trademarked? I thought Marvel only owned Death's Head, not Straxus. The point is, everyone went nuts over Springer, saying he was pure perfection. But we should all face the facts. He's not perfect. It's like Star Wars. Overall it's good, but there are some flaws that people seem to forget about unless they know how to critique these things fairly. I suppose I should start off with the helicopter mode, because no one ever starts off with that, and I should distinguish myself from other reviewers. From most angles, it looks pretty cool. Right away, the colour scheme is eye-catching and rich. The placement of it is near perfect, and the dark grey adds so much character. It's very hard to pull off grey on a figure, so this is pretty good. This light grey spot on the back, which is clearly the legs, doesn't look out of place for once. I guess the IDW aesthetic lends itself to big chunky robot limbs being sort of obvious. Although there aren't many paint apps, the ones here seem fairly appropriate. Oh, and a quick thing. Do not pursue the Sakara version that's coming next year. It looks terrible. You will regret it. Finally, to top off the pros, the landing gear is pretty neat. And the way the back wheels suck in to elongate this mode is some damn fine engineering. Okay, time to go through the long list of cons right now. There are quite a few, especially in this mode. First off, the wings are way too bulky. I get that they had to be the arm, and that Hasbro has a budget constraint even more so nowadays, but they are just abysmal. They peg into the size of the torso, but those sides just flop around all over the place when you try to fiddle with it. The wheels are also plainly visible from almost every angle, and the back looks utterly terrible. Hello hands! Not trying very hard to hide, are you? From the top, they're also pretty bad, with holes large enough for fake Crumble's hook to go right through, and that's one of the worst parts. The cockpit also seems a bit underdone. These gaps on the side where the car sides flip back really bug me, and from some angles you can see right through it. Also, is it just me or does the paintwork on the side windows seem a bit sloppy? I don't know, something seems a bit fishy to me. Taking a look at its back, it's clear that these are just the legs. It's not just the grey parts, no. It's the exposed ratchets. Also, you'd think this panel would clip into the legs, but no, it's too big and doesn't align properly. This means that the legs have nowhere to peg into and rely on friction like the arms, although they do stay in place a little better than you'd think. Finally, the stabilizers of the back do not peg in anywhere either. Out of all the parts of the toy, these are the weakest. They will always flop around and force you to realign them, even if you leave it on the desk for a couple of hours. I hate these flaps. If they weren't so integral to the figure, I'd cut them off. Before I move on, I should probably mention the weapon storage. Many people have had problems with it, but really it's quite simple if you know what you're doing. First, folding in the landing gear, you have to take note of the pegs on the underside of the gun. These will fit into the slots at the front of the helicopter. Once you know how to do it, it's a simple case of jamming it in there. I'm not too sure about the longevity of the connection though, but for now it seems okay, and this is a second-hand toy. Someone probably played with it at some point, and after using it a bit more, there doesn't seem to be any extra problems. This mode scales pretty well next to other Voyager copter formers. It doesn't do so well next to leader class figures, but since I've lost most of mine I can't show them. Oh well, no big deal, I'm not a scale fanatic anyway. All in all, this mode is the weakest of the three. It looks fine from a distance, but hold it within the space of 2 meters and you'll see it's riddled with faults. I usually forget about this mode altogether, so let's move onwards and upwards. The transformation to car mode is dead simple, and they share a lot of key aesthetics, unlike the previous triple changes which try to hide the kibble away under panels and arms and whatever. You do have to parts film the blades, but in a case like this I can't seem to dislike it. And that's saying something, because usually I hate parts forming. Looking at you, Salvia Promenon. You better make up for it when you get here. It helps when you transform the sword mode first and then unpeg it. Speaking of which, sword mode! It's an awesome feature that I'll touch upon later, but for now I'll just store it away. The way it pegs into the bottom of the knee spikes is fantastic, or it would be if it worked more than 60% of the time. That'll be touched upon later as well though, because we're done! Looking like he drove out of Mad Max and got a more stylish coat of paint, Springer is much better in this mode. This car just screams beef, and the colour placement is even better than the copter. It seems less random and more concentrated. The dark grey stripe on the bottom is a really nice touch. Most of the flaws of the helicopter have been rectified here, such as the exposed ratchets, the exposed hands, the weirdly painted side windows, and the gappy front section. Well, that last bit was almost fixed, but he still looks awesome. You can mount the gun on his top, and for once, this doesn't look stupid. It complements the vehicle mode rather than taking away from it. You can also fold up a seat, but it looks stupid. Besides, it's completely out of scale, and I don't really think there are any other Transformers that can use it. Still, the car mode looks awesome. There are some faults here, however. For starters, this figure doesn't really hold together as well as many would hope. It stays in place, but it's got that whole misalignment thing going on there where the panels never quite click, and the clearance on the bottom is off half the time. I said I'd explain the storage issues later, and later is now. The alignment issues this toy has does hell with the pegs, making it hard to get the sword in the first place. The windows are the biggest offender of this issue. They will not peg in at all 99% of the time, so just give up. The front is also a bit weird too. From the top it looks fine, but if you look at it horizontally you can see all that weird gappy nothingness. The sword's also visible if you look far down enough. The top panel doesn't plug into anywhere, which is a real shame. A peg or a clip would really have solidified this figure. Most of the car mode has decent paintwork, but the back section really suffers. I don't mind the headlights, because they're ingeniously the pegs that keep the back of the helicopter and the legs in place, but I do think a license plate or just something would have been nice. Finally, the spoilers that were originally the helicopter stabilizers are pretty much the same, only now the top parts flop around as well, making fiddling with it even more annoying. Scale-wise, this model's pretty out of proportion. With other cars it's not so bad, but next to other copter forms it's really lacking. Oh well, you can't win them all. Although this car mode is miles above the helicopter, it still retains a similar summary. Looking closer makes you realize just how many flaws it has. The difference here, however, is that the bulkiness fills in the gap, and it conveys a unique feeling a lot better. That feeling being in line with Lockdown's vehicle mode. Animated or Hunt for Decepticons, I mean. Age of Extinction doesn't count. The transformation to robot mode is satisfying, but I can't help just feeling like it's an upscaled deluxe. It's strange, because he has a similar amount of steps to the last review's of Asian Optimus, yet I feel it's still a lesser figure in that regard. It's probably because of which parts you transform, and the parts you don't. The legs are way too simple, and I wish there was something that could have made them more complex. The torso is also a little bit underdone, although it does look great, so I'll let it slide. Most of the conversion happens in the lower arms, where the panels all collapse in to form one of the bulkiest things I've seen in a long time. All in all, it's a little disappointing. I keep doing it again and again, and not in a good way, because I sort of feel like I've been cheated. All that simplicity does make way for an epic robot, though. Usually a toy is designed with a specific mode in mind, with a few exceptions. This guy, the robot is the clear focus. Lacking any of the bad kibble and sticking with the good in the right places, this guy is ready for anything. First, you'll notice his colour scheme. It's not as good as the placement of the car, as I think they could have been more green. No, not that much! No! But I'm not complaining. Springer is also some of the best wheel placement I've seen in a toy since Battle Begins 2-pack animated Optimus Prime, with the shoulders and lower legs integrating them fantastically. While we're on the topic of the legs, the knee spikes are the landing gear. This is a great idea, and I wish a lot more toys would use it like this. The chest and the midriff section are just gorgeous. The yellow is pretty damn perfect in its shape. And did I mention the head? It's awesome. I'm not too sure about the light piping though. Works, but seems a bit cloudy for my taste. Springer's weapons put Warbot Defenders to shame. I don't own that toy, but I can tell it's nothing compared to this. The way the sword folds up is pretty damn cool, and the crossguard pegging in to stop the spinning is a nice touch. It's certainly better than a random peg. I'm not too sure about the placement though. Isn't it supposed to be flush with the blade rather than perpendicular? The gun's also good too. It relies on friction fire, but not the bad kind where you just shove something out of a hole. Instead, there's a slider that feels like a spring launcher, even though it isn't. The missiles also look better in the gun, rather than out. It complements the design, which is something I can't say for a lot of missiles that extend this far out. Oh, and on the topic of missiles, I found that missile for Megatron. Yay! The weapons can combine in two different ways, although one way is clearly stupid. Can you guess which one looks better? Really? You think it's the top? You'd be forgiven for thinking that with this piece that aligns the sword's handle, but it looks really dumb in my opinion. Springer also can't hold on to the top part in this configuration, so I usually put it on the bottom. It becomes an awesome bayonet. and although it isn't in line with his character, I've got better things to do tonight than argue with IDW fanboys, like editing this video. Oh, I'm just kidding, IDW was awesome. Except when the Combaticons joined North Korea. That was stupid. I've praised this mode quite a bit, but there are a few issues here. Probably the most annoying is the lack of ankle movement. His feet are frozen in one position, which bothers me quite a bit. I'm also turned off by the arms. The upper arms flow in the wrong direction, and they get thinner as they go up. And the lower arms are way too bulky. I don't really see a way they could have changed this without redesigning the whole figure, but the point still stands. When looking at the top of this figure, he also looks very hollow. You can see how they tried to fill it in, but they clearly failed. On the topic of the chest, these side bits fall off way too easily. Honestly, I don't know what's worse, the stabilizers or the side of the chest. No, it's definitely the stabilizers. They still have the same problems, and the lack of pegs mean they stick out and don't provide anything. No, they don't provide extra support. Whoever says that is wrong. They don't do Finally, the back section is a little annoying. Springer's waist articulation doesn't work properly unless you unhinge it. I hate it when they do that. For articulation, the head is on a ball joint, but he can't move from side to side. The arms are both on a swivel and a ball joint, and he has a bicep swivel. His elbows are ratcheted, his wrists swivel, and they move in just a tad. His waist swivel is very subtle, and many won't notice it because it's hindered by the back panel. His hips are on both a universal joint and a mushroom peg, and he has ratcheted knees. They're weird though. You have to leave them a little bit bent, because if you put them all the way, they'll bend in slightly. It's kind of weird. The alignment is clearly off, and that's really it, because his feet are entirely frozen. All in all, Springer isn't perfect. Each mode has its fair share of flaws, especially in the lack of pegs on its many parts. That being said though, if you take into account what it's doing, which is handling 3 different modes, you should be able to cut it some slack and appreciate its success. All in all, I give this figure 4 stars. It's miles above what Hasbro has done in the past, and the future looks brighter than ever. Or not, but Sentinel Prime looks pretty bad in my opinion. Well, I think I'll just stick with Toy World Avila Star I've ordered, but it hasn't arrived yet. Until then, enjoy the next review where I take on a Gundam. Hope the stickers don't kill me.